I call it standard. Ken Eyring.
Okay. Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony about to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and the pain, and the perjury. All right, please have a seat, and I'm going to ask you to spell your last name for me.
Okay, can you hear me? Ken Eyring, E-Y-R-I-N-G.
Thank you, Ken. Where do you live and how long do you live there?
I live in Windham, New Hampshire. Lived there since 1998.
Thank you. What's your interest in this case?
Well, I live in, is that me doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, I turned it up a little bit. That makes the mic very sensitive.
Okay, can you still hear me? Okay. Well, I live in Windham. And back in November 3rd, 2020, the election results from Election Day were very close in the Rockingham 7 state rep race. There were 4 state rep seats that were open. 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats ran. And the difference in vote totals between the 4th place Republican and the 1st place Democrat was 24 votes. So there was a challenge, asked for a recount. The recount took place on, I believe, November 12th, 9 days later. I was present for the recount. And at the end of probably 3 hours of counting, give or take, you can see that the Secretary of State, the Deputy Secretary of State, and several other election officials who were overseeing that process were very concerned. They were very open, very transparent. I kudos to the team that did that recount. And at the end of the day, I felt that the votes that were on the ballots, that were cast on the ballots in the room, were properly counted. But you could see that there was an issue, and they put all the numbers, they had 4 tables, they tallied up all the votes. They put all of the results from all 4 tables into a spreadsheet. They saw large discrepancies, and they did their due diligence, and they actually had additional people step in, cross-check references. They re-verified all the totals going all the way back to the tabulating sheets, had different people go through the entire process again, recheck the spreadsheet. So they did a really good job.
What happens when you
had
eat?
a third team of people look in. So they did that, to my recollection. It took about an hour to an hour and a half just trying to figure out what was wrong. The difference in votes grew from 24 votes on election day to 424 votes at the recount. It's an enormous change in votes. Not only that, all 4 Republican representatives lost 300 votes, give or take 3 votes. So one lost 297, another gained 303, and the other two.
I'm going to cut you off. We need to focus on safety.
Okay.
So kind of going into the
Okay.
issues.
Well, you're asking for my concerns, and I want to make sure. So in addition to that, there was an audit that was triggered, and the audit to me proved that the machines are not accurate, because all 9,926 ballots, which were the same number of ballots that went through the machines on election night, all of them went through each of all 4 machines. And when you compare the results of the paper tapes from each of those results during the audit that was performed back in May, those results have significant discrepancies between the machines.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you witness any of the testing with the AccuVote systems? Were you there for the audit?
I was there for the audit. I wasn't there on every day, but the days that I wasn't there, I was there on almost every day. But the days that I weren't there, I watched it on video.
Thank you. Did you witness anyone working on the machines?
Yes, Harry Hursty, who was the only auditor who was qualified, according to the auditors, to actually, have any background with the physical machines.
And do you know what Harry Hursty's credibility is as far as is he certified, OSHA otherwise, or in any manner?
I have no idea.
Thank you. And of course, do you know if he used protective equipment while working on the equipment?
Well, he had something strapped to his wrist, but I don't know if that was, appropriate or not.
Thank you. And those are the only questions I have.
I would like to make a clarification, if I
Go
could.
ahead.
There's two things. One, when the judge asked you about the imaging of the EEPROM chip,
Thank you.
they did take pictures, but the chip itself was also imaged. So a copy of the chip's software was actually imaged so that they could then compare that with the software on other chips.
Similar like the hard drive that Ron was
That's
talking about, right?
exactly right.
So it does both. So it's a physical picture, and it takes an image of the whole thing.
They took a physical picture and they took a copy of the chips of the EEPROMs. And the other thing I want to point out is that when Mr. Brandano was up here, he was asked by the Attorney General's office about the signatures.
Objection, Your Honor, this is not a response to a question.
Would you please ask me a question about the chain of custody records?
And that's why judges usually deny that objection. That's the question.
Yes, could you please expound on your observations?
I have hundreds of pages of chain of custody records from the 4 window machines. And I too have discovered that there are inappropriate filings on those documents. When maintenance was performed, they simply put maintenance. There's no details as to what type of maintenance was performed, whether whether the machines were opened up, whether chips, hardware, software. There is no indication on those. In addition to that, the forms are not properly filled out. In many instances, the serial numbers for the memory cards are not even filled in. That to me is a huge issue. That to me leads to a lack of credibility for people doing the work. And the proper number of signatures are missing in almost every case. And if you look at the bottom of that form, it clearly states that 3 signatures must be on that form every time the seal is broken. The person doing the work and 2 witnesses. It's on the bottom of the form. So 3 signatures every time the chain of custody seal is broken should be signed on that form. I also agree with Mr. Brandano that it's in most cases, almost every case, it's virtually impossible to know who did the work and for the person who opened up the machine or did any kind of maintenance, because it's chip and scratch. And I'm serving on a committee right now, and one of the suggestions is that form should be modified in order to have the printed name as well as the signature.
Thank you. And you just alluded to something, and I'm going to change the question or ask a different question. The Secretary of State has established a a voter confidence commission. You sit on that commission. What has been your experience with the concerns of people of New Hampshire in regards to what's going on with our voting machines?
Well, it's varied, and I want to give kudos to Secretary of State for doing this. This is the only state that appears to be concerned about, concerns of voters. I believe he deserves accolades for that. We've heard all kinds of, it's all the entire spectrum. There are people who serve in office as election officials. They believe that they've done a good job and elections have run properly in their towns. We've had people who live in those towns who've gotten up and confirmed that they feel very confident about the elections in their towns. And we have other people who have come and have expressed concerns, ranging from one instance is a gentleman came before the committee and showed proof that after he bought his house, that that votes were cast in the names of the previous people who owned that house multiple times. And so he showed the voting, what's it called,
Voter checklist?
The voter checklist, right, the voting checklist, where the names are crossed out. So as people vote, they cross out the names so that somebody can't come in subsequently later, or the same person come in and cast a second vote. So it clearly shows that under the names of the people who previously owned the home, votes were cast in their names. In addition to that, we have another person who came in and has taken some records using United States Postal Service permanent address requests for changing of address, and cross-reference that against the checklist of voters who have voted. And she's presented documentation to the committee that shows, the first time she showed us approximately 1,000 instances, and she came back and there was multiple thousands of instances. So these are things that I brought up with Assistant Attorney General Ann Edwards when we had our committee meeting in Berlin a few weeks ago, and she suggested that this person actually provide that documentation to the office, that she promised that they would look into it. So, it's a whole range of spectrum. You've got people who think that the ones who are expressing concerns are gaslighting, and you have the other extreme where, and I don't mean that they're extreme, but I just mean you've got two ends of the spectrum. You've got others who are concerns, and they're issuing not just thoughts or general statements, but quite a few people have actually provided documentation to back up and justify their concerns. So we're going to put together a report in the next few weeks, and we'll present our findings to the Secretary of State, and then he'll follow up with it as he desires. I'm serving at the pleasure of the Secretary of State, and it's an honor to be here to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Eyring. You mentioned that you're a member of the Specialty on Voter Confidence, is that correct?
Yes.
And you attended the meeting in Berlin a couple weeks ago.
That's when we met.
So at that, just going to your mention of a circumstance such as where individuals who previously lived in a house and sold a house and then were shown as having voted on a county checklist, we recall testimony from the Attorney General's office at that Berlin hearing relating to circumstances such as that.
I do. You had said that you looked into some instances, and that sometimes there are justifications for that. Trying to remember exactly how you...
Fair to say that that circumstance arises if an individual is a member of the armed forces.
That's
and
correct.
Moves as a member of the armed forces, is deployed overseas, and is still allowed by law.
That's correct. Or people have moved or when they're out of the country, they're allowed to use the address.
Or do you recall that testimony, would it be fair to say that there was testimony that if an individual has moved from a house and has not yet established domicile elsewhere, that would be another circumstance where they would show up as voting on the checklist at a house that they no longer live in. Going to the Auburn machines, have you personally observed maintenance on the Town of Auburn machines before?
Yes, sir.
Going to the audit, the forensic audit, you indicated that you attended on multiple days and also watched a live stream of that audit, is that correct?
Yeah, I was there for almost every day.
And is it fair to say that during the Wyndham audit, the machines were examined, the ballot counting devices were examined in a number of different ways?
I would need you to be more specific. I'm not going to answer a general statement like that. They could be interpreted in such a broad way.
Were ballots ever fed into the machines?
Yes.
Were the machines opened and handled by personnel, the ballot counting device top?
Were they opened?
Yeah, you indicated that for example, Mr. Kirsty
That's correct.
was opening the top of the ballot counting device, was managing memory cards, that chips were removed or put into a reader. Is that fair to say that those actions happened?
Yes.
During the course of that, well, how long did the Wyndham audit go?
15 days, I believe.
During the course of those 15 days, the manipulations and examinations of the ballot counting devices, did any of those devices explode?
I think we both know the answer is no to that. That's a pretty ridiculous question.
No further questions, please.
I'm sorry.
I would like to respond to one of the things he had me
I'd
answer.
like to ask you, did you witness anything bad happen to machines during the examination?
I did not. If it's possible for me to talk about the address lists, I would like to expand upon that.
Address list?
He's talking about the checklists.
The checklist.
The voter checklists where someone
The people
crossed
who-
out but didn't live at the address anymore.
Yes, I would like to further clarify that.
I'm going to pass on that.
It's important.
I understand, but it gets off topic because here we're about a safety issue.
Okay.
And so I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
All right, sir, you may sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Croc TV.